I isolated myself for a week to see what happened. Yay! Okay, this all started one night when I was running my life away on YouTube. I found myself watching a video that was addressing the increasing amount of shut-ins in the world, and specifically in Japan, as a wide-range term used for such a person is hikikomori. If you didn't know, the term hikikomori is defined as a person who is neither in work nor school, does not have social interactions, and are socially withdrawn for more than 6 months. It's a form of severe social withdrawal, and the phenomenon is increasing to over 1.2% of the population of Japan, and there are many more cases similar around the world. The video was about a day in the life of somebody who identified as a hikikomori, and it got me wondering how comparable it is to my lifestyle currently. Of course, I go to school, I frequently leave the house on weekends, and I talk to people pretty much every day. But I've always been an indoor person, so what would it be like to go all in? In psychological studies and experiments, there's always an ethical standard to follow, which for this may have been thrown out the window, but seeing as how I would be the subject, I had no problems with it. To try and capture the same effect in my study, I made sure I would be in my room nearly the whole day, as of course I still need to get food and use a washroom, but I could not speak to anybody, including people in my household. On top of this, I didn't allow myself to use social media apps, pretty much just Instagram to avoid doom scrolling, except YouTube, to be as reclusive as I could. To keep track of the effects, I kept a notebook where I wrote my thoughts down each day, as well as a printed children's form on feelings just for fun. So with that, there is day 1, Sunday. I didn't notice any significant changes in my behavior that day, which is expected. As a chronically tired person, it was not entirely different from an average Sunday of mine, aside from the time I woke up, which I noted was around 1:28 p.m. On an average day with no school, I'd usually wake up around 10 to 11 a.m. The exact reason I slept so long could possibly be attributed to the fact that I knew nobody was going to say anything if I did, since I already informed my parents and the rest of my family about this project. Okay, what I wrote down in my log was, already not off to a great start, questioning what I'm really doing, feeling pretty lazy already, couldn't use my phone so I ended up randomly lying down at times, and then sleeping around 3:03 a.m., and then a picture of me running away. My feelings sheet also, I honestly just wrote that I felt tired, I slept a lot, and that's kind of it. So, honestly, I consider day 1 to be non-conclusive, so moving on. On Monday, when I would usually be at school, I'm instead doing work at home. The most notable change was how often I slept during the day. I don't take naps often, however on that day I found myself lying down randomly at times when I was bored and dozing off. I reported being relieved and more positive than negative, which is likely due to the fact that I had managed to get some tasks off my list that day. I had not been writing much thoughts down in my log at the time, since I was preoccupied with getting some work done most of the day, so for my log I kinda just wrote about how I didn't really feel that much, probably because I'm sort of used to staying just in my room. Don't see my parents that much during the day either because they have work, so it's not too huge of a difference. And I slept at 3:46 a.m. Again, my sleep schedule has always been pretty bad, so this isn't a huge turn for the worse. Day 3. That day, I started to vocalize more of my thoughts in my logs. From my log, I began to question my situation, as well as my motives for what I'd chosen to do during the day. One line literally reads, "I just found out there's a Hawk2 dating app, and now I wonder where society has gone." As well as questioning if the state I was in was somewhere I actually wanted to be in the future. The answer is no. What I noted, though, was a discrepancy of time between my internal clock and the actual passage of time. This is an effect that many call temporal disorientation, in which a person has difficulty in determining their way in time and space. It's hypothesized to be related to isolation, as a part of the brain that's in charge of this, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which also controls circadian rhythm, is disrupted by social isolation. This is also supported by the fact that I consistently forgot to take my medication at the time I usually do in the ongoing days. So in my feelings sheet, I reported being bored and worried because I could not shake the feeling of lethargy no matter what I did. I'm going to spare you guys the details, but I spent a lot of time that day thinking. It was at this point that I started to feel an impending sense of doom, for lack of better words. I felt an urgency in my actions, like there was some vague importance in everything I did. Seeing as no significant events had happened that recently, It's likely that this could also be a result of the isolation, where I'd taken a simple event, but my emotional response was much more negative and impactful than it usually would have been. I began to reflect on my connections with other people, questioning how their responses would be. The ones I had written down were mostly negative. There's actually a bias that is theorized for lonely people to have, in which they interpret ambiguous social interactions as negative. Although my example is only an instance, I thought it should mention the long-term effects. The feeling sheet I filled out reflected mostly my frustration at my own incompetence at math, which is what I had been doing prior to filling it in. All in all, Wednesday seemed to be an amalgamation of my frustrations, which were somewhat worsened by the lack of contact I had with other people. Oh shit. Okay. Day 5, Thursday. Which I wrote wrong in my log because I forgot the order. By far, this had to be the worst day. I spent a lot of this time questioning everything. Questioning things that I did in the past. Questioning where I am in my life right now. There were a lot of strange thoughts in this log. A lot of these are kind of personal actually, but there's this line, with the lines including, I miss elementary when I didn't stay up all night doing homework. I'm such a fucking lazy ass piece of shit. Yeah. It's better to be successful and depressed than unsuccessful and depressed, because everybody's probably depressed either way. Why not try to be better in the logical sense? This is so stupid. This day, I experienced the height of inconsistency of my emotions. It was here when I began to impactfully feel the distance between myself and other people. I reported missing my little sister, whose innocent nature made me hope that she doesn't end up like me. As you could probably already tell, I was already being negative, which, following the cycle of loneliness, would in turn make me feel detached even further. It's a little comical to see my writing after this, where I wrote a whole paragraph about feeling weird to not miss one of my closest friends, only to immediately follow it with, I lied, I want to talk to her. My thought process became sporadic, coming to strange conclusions. In my feelings sheet, I stated I felt paranoid due to the realization that I'd have to face the world in the state. However, this continued on to Day 6 Friday! Okay, I'll be honest, I don't remember much from that day. My logs consisted of lots and lots of self-reflection and criticism, and random comments about dogs. I remember what I ate for breakfast. Considering I didn't eat much throughout the day either, the more days I spent that went by in this fashion, the less I had the appetite for food. I spent long amounts of time on my laptop watching YouTube videos because in the moment it was what gave me some sense of comfort. I wrote a comment that goes like, it was a cycle of sleeping, consuming media, doing work, and repeat. It's hard to describe exactly how it felt. It's not terrible, but I can't say I'd want to live like this. But through this, I've somewhat realized the extent of my incompetency. The comfort in what may be destructive behaviors. The fan is really loud, but I guess it's nice to have some noise in here. For the feelings sheet, I reported feeling relieved but also restless. I expressed that due to the time I spent in my room, I felt less and less like while I was in there. I started to think more about what I'd do once I got out. Ultimately, I realized that the study was taking a toll on me mentally and physically, so I decided to end it a day short, with a total of 6 days spent in isolation. From what I had learned about the effects of social isolation and loneliness, is a significant amount of mental exhaustion that can happen as a result. I personally think that saying what's on my mind out loud to other people is an effective way for letting off steam and clearing the mind a little bit. Not that it can't be done by other methods, just that it's an important one of the few. Having that taken away felt strange, overwhelming but also stagnant. You've probably heard this a lot, but humans are fundamentally social creatures. Social support is posited as health benefiting. I honestly had unhealthy habits before beginning the study, and over the time I was isolated, they only seemed to worsen. I began to feel forgetful, prone to getting angry, and constantly tired. In the days that followed the ending of the experiment, I realized that my thought processes were very slow, like I had to manually piece together information to form a thought or come to a conclusion. I couldn't stay focused, and my eyes stung from being outside on a sunny day. Although I never experienced hallucinations, other than a few minor sounds I heard in the silence that I couldn't explain. But those were probably nothing, as loneliness is a mainly subjective state of being, which I mean that it is perceived social isolation that produced these effects. Although I didn't speak with anyone, for the first few days I didn't feel lonely. I was simply alone. But the last few days, I began to have a sense of hopelessness, further fueling my idea of being lonely. Loneliness is a cycle.